Greetings, everyone. Happy Monday, September 9th here on the Wolverine.com. Anthony Broom with Chris Ballas, Clayton Safey in the black. It's the black Detroit Lions jersey I see. Number 9, Waymo, as they're calling him around these parts.
Matt Stafford.
Favorite player. The only number 9 for the Lions I like is James.
It's like Matt Stafford. Isn't that a Matt Stafford jersey?
Is that the guy that lost yesterday?
It is.
That's right.
Yeah, but he did a hell of a job here when he was here. So, but
great
win for the Lions, boys.
He looks good in losses. Yeah, he does.
Yes.
Yeah, is that the guy whose wife threw a pretzel at someone? I don't know.
Did that happen?
Probably deservedly so, if we're being honest. Those downriver Lions fans, man, get nasty. I'm just saying.
Don't know what you're talking about. I don't live downriver anymore.
Not anymore, you don't.
Welcome in. We have a lot to get to today. We are going to turn the page on Texas week. I think that's best for all of us, but we will wrap up some of our thoughts on that. Sherrone Moore spoke to the media on Monday afternoon. We'll discuss some of his comments there. We'll take your questions like we do every week on the show. Wanted to open up on a bit of a somber note, just a quick little aside. And I'm sorry if people are hearing it this way. James Earl Jones, shortly before we jumped on the air, passed away at age 93 today. Obviously, iconic actor, stage, screen. He's an EGOT guy. Obviously, the voice of a voice of many things: Mufasa, Darth Vader. But people around here probably best know him as the voice of Michigan's hype video at the Big House. So I wanted to, of course, send our condolences to his family. Obviously, a huge Michigan fan. And for what my money's worth, the best game presentation thing they've done at the Big House in the last 10 years or so is including him in that hype video. And still, Clayton and I, every week we go down to level 3, just kind of get some fresh air, see that hype video, watch the team run out in the field. And it's just talking about it the other day, how awesome it is to have him as a part of that. So,
wow.
Condolences to his family. Big loss for not just the Michigan community, but entertainment at large. So I wanted to open up tonight with just some quick little reflection on that. Any favorite James Earl Jones roles?
You know what? His cameo in Big Bang Theory. I don't know if you guys ever watched The Big Bang Theory. But when Sheldon goes after him and then James Earl Jones takes him for a night out on the town and he goes, let me guess. He was at breakfast. He goes, let me guess. You like Star Wars? He goes, I like Star Wars too. And then he takes him out and he says, I've got a Lion King residual check burning in my pocket and let's go out on the town. And he says, let's go to Mexico. And then they're in a Turkish bath together or a steam bath or something like that. It was amazing. But James Earl Jones is, I did not hear this news before we went on the air, and God bless him, man. That hype video is unbelievable. That voice, we will never forget it. Great Michigan grad, great Michigan man. He will be missed.
Yeah. If you build it, they will come is another
Moonlight
great line.
Graham.
What's that?
Moonlight Graham.
Yeah. No, he's fantastic. Rest in peace. And I think my favorite line in the intro video is, we bow to no man, we bow to no program. And certainly that's been true. Winning, no one has won more, as James Earl Jones says in the video. And Jim Harbaugh had to fly out and meet with James Earl Jones to convince him to do that video. And thank God he did, because that'll live on forever.
Absolutely. One of my favorite movies ever, Coming to America. And I love when he's yelling at the assistant later in the movie. He's like, you'll be punished by staying in our royal suite at the Waldorf Astoria. Great stuff. Just wanted to start with a shout out there. Speaking of shout outs, we want to shout out our sponsor of our Monday night show, our friends over at homefieldapparel.com. You guys have heard us talk about them for, it feels like years at this point. Have an entire wardrobe of their stuff, whether it's the weather warms up a little bit, you got the long sleeve shirts. It's as breathable and as comfortable as anything I own. When it gets a little cooler here, a little bit of football weather over the weekend, that was kind of nice outside of the game result. They got the joggers, they've got crew neck sweatshirts, they've got hoodies, and it's great vintage looking apparel, designed out of love, out of passion for all of these schools, a great attention to detail, and they're also located in the heart of Big Ten country in Indianapolis, Indiana. So shout out to our friends over at homefield.com. For listeners here at the Wolverine, use that promo code Wolverine for 15% your first order over at homefieldapparel.com. Listen, it's a lot of football left to be played. I know you guys are going to get out to the Big House at some point for a game. Stock up, refresh your your game day fits with, for what my money's worth, sponsor or not, some of the best stuff that you can buy. So use that promo code Wolverine for 15% off your order at homefieldapparel.com. We will get to the Sherrone Moore Monday press conference here in a second, but the first time the three of us have all been on the air together since that game on Saturday. And, it's kind of well-plowed grounds at this point. I think that the through line with maybe all of our takeaways from that game is that, listen, I mean, getting blown out by 3 scores was always within the range of outcomes. I think none of us expected them to win. None of us picked them to win. I think the most concerning thing for all of us, and at different points this weekend, we all have sort of said this, was how it looked. That was, I think the best way to put it was the way that, I wrote it the other day. I mean, I don't know that it's discouraging. I don't know that it's, a condemnation on the Sherrone Moore era by any means, but I think it is sobering. It was a big time measuring stick, and they just flat out weren't ready for it. The coaches weren't ready for it. The players weren't ready for it. And there's a lot of work to do here. And this is a game week where you got Arkansas State, potential opportunity for a get right game. But I think a lot of eyes were open, not just within the fan base, but I kind of feel like they're surprised that it went that way too. What are your fellas' takes a few days out from that game?
Yeah, it was disappointing. Frankly, the lack of attention to detail, the fundamentals that were lacking, the lack of communication. It would have been one thing to play this team toe to toe and get beat physically and just, have a really good, hard hitting, fundamentally sound football game. And it was not that on the Michigan side. You had linemen pulling into the backs of their centers. You had secondary that just didn't communicate. Linebacker play was awful. Tackling was terrible. When's the last time we could say that about a Michigan team? And that should never be the case, guys. It shouldn't, especially with that many returning starters and guys with experience on defense. To me, that was really disturbing. I thought your column was fantastic too. When you talk about guys on the field that were kind of jawing at each other a little bit. And I sensed a lack of leadership, whether it was coaching staff, whether it was players. That's what really bothered me the most. This did not look like a Michigan football team. And I thought, you nailed it when you said, even in the first Jim Harbaugh game of the first Harbaugh of his era at Utah, they looked like they belonged there. They did not look like they belonged this time. And in fact, there were some flashbacks of 10 years ago, frankly, pre-Harbaugh, that really bugged me. Now, that does not mean they can't improve. Maybe it was an anomaly. USC is going to tell us a ton, fellas. That is going to be the opportunity. Whatever happens against Arkansas State, that's going to be the opportunity for this team to prove that it's not as bad as it showed. And as Sherrone Moore said today, he said he didn't think they were that far from Texas. I don't know if I agree with him, but certainly if they can just clean up the basics, they're going to be a much better football team.
Yeah, and I don't know that he has anything, any other way to respond to that question, to be quite honest as well. So I didn't take a ton from that comment. It was clear on Saturday, though, that they were pretty far away, and it didn't seem like just a Saturday problem. It seemed like, maybe Michigan's not as good as a lot of people thought they were. And I will say, I think Texas might be, or definitely is, pretty legit. I thought Texas was the better, more talented, better coached team that also played really well for what it is. Michigan did not look as good or as talented and didn't play as well as it could. So that amounts to what was a blowout victory. It could have been worse, certainly. Michigan played a little better in the second half. It didn't feel like Texas, did everything it could maybe in the second half. If it was a tight game, I'm sure they would have scored more than 7 points given the way things were going in the first half. But I thought Texas had a great game plan. They looked at the Michigan defense and said, okay, what are the strengths that we're going up against? It's the two guys in the middle, Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham, the corner on one side, Will Johnson, and the aggressive nature in which Wink Martindale calls the defense. And they used all of that to exploit Michigan. A lot of screens, a lot of stuff to the outside, tired out the defensive line, stayed away from Will Johnson. When Michigan got aggressive and got too far upfield in its pass rush lanes, Quinn Ewers was fantastic at stepping up, moving in the pocket, making the right plays and slinging it downfield. Michigan had obviously a ton of tackling issues. They missed 8 tackles according to PFF in this game. I do want to go back and see when the last time it was that they had that many missed tackles, and I'm sure there were more, because there were some other times when guys just weren't even in position to make a tackle, which is perhaps even a worse issue. So that was the most surprising part, was that the defense got carved up a little bit in the first half, and part of that was Michigan not staying on schedule offensively, not being able to stay on the field, losing the field position battle badly due to turnovers and a bad punt too that had a bad bounce, unfortunate for Michigan. And that leads to these guys being gassed on the field. Kenneth Grant played a career high 60 snaps. His previous career high was 41. That was the week before against Fresno State. So clearly there's something here where this offense can't stay on the field. The defense doesn't have as much depth up front as they want. And that leads to Texas being able to kind of toy with you a little bit in that first half to build a 21-point lead.
I've been wrestling with this since doing the second rewatch on Sunday and after writing the column. I almost, and don't get me wrong, like, you would trade Saturday's result for a win by any stretch of the imagination. On the same token, I almost wonder if this is kind of a shock to the system that everyone needs, because really for the last several months, it's kind of been I don't want to say it's hubris, but there's been a confidence that despite replacing all of these pieces, backfilling all these pieces on the coaching staff, on the roster, that it's all good, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And they know what the recipe is. I almost feel like everyone kind of needs that just knowing the recipe isn't enough. There's a lot of work that needs to be put in here. And there's not a single thing outside of Dominic Zavada that can't get better out there. And I think they know it. Sherrone Moore said it on Monday. He said it after the game Saturday as well. We need to see that now. And I know, if they, I think really the only thing you could do now is just win your way out of it, right? Like, you got to play a good, complete game on Saturday. You got to beat USC next week. I mean, if you come out of the next couple of weeks staring 2-2 in the face and you still really haven't fixed anything, I think that could be a kind of dark place to pull themselves out of. And, the best coaches at any level of sport have a way of like pulling their teams out of a dark place and making sure, something like that doesn't happen again, or at least applying a lesson and getting guys sailing in the right direction. I mean, everything is so out of sync right now. And some of it takes time. Some of it takes, kind of putting egos aside and being what you are instead of what you'd like to be. So yeah, that's how I feel about that. We do have a 1999 super chat from L'Oreal who says, when Ohio State loses, Jim Knowles stands up there and faces reporters. Even if he doesn't say anything, he faces the cameras. I want Wink to explain what he did to that defense. No game plan, no fundamentals, no tackling. I would just say overall, I'd like to hear from Michigan's coordinators a little bit more. Even when they were winning the last few years, we typically only get them once or twice a season.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me, and I don't understand that either. But I don't think it's their decision. And I think if they were made available, if somebody were asked them, "Hey, do you want to go out there?" They'd say, "Sure, I'll go out there and talk." And they aren't shying away from it, but they just aren't offered up to us. So, and that's disappointing. I don't remember Knowles standing up there and facing anybody after they lost to Michigan in 2022. Did he?
Yeah, he talked right after the game.
Oh, did he really? Well, good for him then. So,
what a guy.
Yeah. But again, it's up to Michigan to bring them to us. And I agree with that. I want to hear what they had to say. It was really a disappointment. It wasn't just you can talk about scheme and everything else. And we only know so much, right? And who's responsible for what. But overall, for them to look like that, they should be better than that with the talent that they have on defense. And we saw it. They're going to be fine against middling Big Ten teams and teams that don't have the offensive line that Texas does, because they have the talent up front to overwhelm a lot of people and the speed to overwhelm a lot of people, like we saw against Fresno. But there was really no excuse for that. Again, guys out of position, guys missing tackles. Those are things that those are major red flags. And we can call it an overreaction like some people over here are saying. But to me, man, on that stage to look like that was extremely disappointing. And as far as the offense goes, They should, you know what, they are, again, it's the sum of the parts, right? And we saw this before the Jim Harbaugh era, like when Brady Hoke goes 5-7 with a lot of talent on that team that we saw, and everybody's saying, well, Jim Harbaugh could win 10 games with these guys. Well, he kind of did, right? And did not have the quarterback. They don't have the quarterback now that they did in Jake Rudock. Davis Warren is far from their biggest problem on offense, in my opinion. I'm seeing people over here calling for Alex Orji based on what, I have no idea. But to suggest that Davis Warren hasn't done anything right at all or is the biggest problem on this offense is certainly not accurate. And in fact, in the fourth quarter, he made some throws that I didn't know he was capable of making. And hopefully he'll continue to improve. But if you split the carries in practice and you don't allow your first string quarterback, at least for this year, to get as much experience as he can, he's going to continue to struggle. And he might anyway, because that offensive line's not doing him any favors.
You're exactly right. And one of the reasons why all offseason I kind of thought they were going to lose this game to Texas was because they had a quarterback battle. Seemed like they were going to go into fall camp with that battle. I felt the offense wouldn't be up to speed early on in the season, and that Texas kind of knew what it was. I mean, they had transfers right at wide receiver, but clearly they have their chemistry down. And Quinn Ewers, if you're a great quarterback and really potentially the Heisman winner this year, it's really early to say that, but he looks like he's certainly somebody who could be in New York. Then chemistry is pretty easy to have, right? And with that offensive line too, that helps as well with the timing and everything else. So, but Michigan didn't have that benefit, and you throw in Jack Tuttle's injury as a factor as well. So, coming into camp, they didn't know exactly what they were going to have. I do think it was a mistake, probably, especially if Davis Warren is, clearly your guy, to go into game week last week before the Fresno game, not knowing who your starter is. Those reps are really valuable, and we've seen quite a few times early in this season already where timing's been off. The quarterback doesn't read the defense, the right defense, and the wide receiver does, or the quarterback does read what the defense is in, and the wide receiver doesn't, or the tight end doesn't, like on the interception that was intended for Colston Loveland, or the drop to Samaj Morgan. That was on Davis Warren on that third down because he thought Samaj was going to keep going. It was zone. He sat down, and the ball was too far inside, and he was only able to get one hand on it. So those things that in a big game against potentially a top 5 team, it certainly is their top 3 team now in the new rankings. You can't have that stuff. You can't still be getting up to speed like you're a team in the first or second week of camp on offense and not a team that's ready to go for a big game. That's what it looked like Michigan is. I think they'll improve. They have a long way to go in a short amount of time with the USC game coming up, like you guys said. But a lot has to get better right away. And like you guys both said in the Super Chat said, the defense was probably the most disappointing part, given what we knew they had coming back. Because we know there's talent there. We've seen these guys play well. Even Jay Sean Barron, we've seen him play well at Maryland, but it didn't come together in the big game, which is extremely disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, I come out of this game, there's absolutely no excuse for that defensive performance. You have guys that are at least projected to be first-round picks on the defensive line who were the nail and not the hammer for really the first time in a long time. Too much miscommunication. I didn't think the game plan was great. Now, again, early on in that game, you're winning the early downs, but in crunch time, in those third and whatever situations, Texas has a killer at quarterback, and that's what Michigan had last year in those situations. And I think that was the biggest kind of juxtaposition, is that, you saw what it looks like when the other side has it compared to what Michigan was the last few years. So a lot to figure out, obviously a lot to clean up. I want to move into Sherrone's Monday press conference and identifying some of the things that he sees going wrong. He said lack of fundamentals need to be improved. Tackling needs to be improved. They don't want pointing fingers. That was another thing I didn't like seeing Saturday. You got guys getting into spats on the sideline. You've got, I think it was Kenneth Grant waving off a substitution at some point in that game. There's a lack of connectivity there, and all that needs to improve, and quickly. Sherrone says that they have urgency, but not panic moving forward. He wants the identity of the offense to be playing with physicality and being detail oriented. So, fellas, I did not make the Monday press conference today, but what did you guys make of what Sherrone had to say? And, it seems like he said the right things, but I think the question for him is that, do you have the power? Do you have the wherewithal? Do you have the ability to fix it as the head coach now?
It's not about what you say. It's about how your team plays. And, people asked him, how close are you? How far are you from Texas? What did they expect him to say? We are miles away from Texas and we'll never catch them. No, he's not going to say that. He said, oh, we're not that far. We just got to improve with the turnovers. We got to improve, on third down and so on and so forth. And I don't think anybody who watched that game thought that Michigan was in the same realm as Texas. I think there are 3 or 4 teams that are head and shoulders above everybody, though. And it doesn't mean that Michigan can't compete with a USC. Maybe it does. We'll find out how good USC is, right? They've got a lot of talent too. And then he was not going to point fingers. And that's what coaches aren't going to do that. Jim Harbaugh never threw an individual player under the bus when he was at Michigan. And we wouldn't expect Sherrone Moore to either. I see people over here saying, well, you know what, Davis Warren missed a pass or missed this pass. Well, yeah, every quarterback misses a couple passes. There were a couple bad misses in that game. At the same time, I saw in the fourth quarter when he was stepping up in the pocket and just slinging it, some great throws, and people can ignore those or they can say, hey, at least it's a sign of progress. He is who he is. And I said in the offseason, they needed to go to the portal. I said it in the summer. I said it in the fall. I said, I think they're going to regret not going to the portal for their quarterback. I think you guys were there when the players were telling us off the record, they thought Jack Tuttle was going to be the guy in the offseason. And we thought, well, at least you got a guy with a little bit of game experience. We don't know how good he's going to be, but that alone, to me, was a red flag. So he's not going to throw anybody under the bus. Evan Link included. To me, I think you have to give Andrew Gentry a shot at right tackle. I can't believe that he didn't get more run the way that game was going. I didn't think that was, maybe there are things we don't know about Andrew Gentry, but even at Big Ten Media Day, Sherrone Moore said, I can't wait. Andrew Gentry has really stepped up and he's looked really good this summer, so on and so forth. And if that's the best they got at right tackle right now, and I think Evan Link will be okay down the road, then they're in trouble. But overall, he said things, he's not going to throw his team under the bus. It is what it is, and they got to improve. And whatever he says doesn't matter. It's got to show up on game day.
Absolutely. And it is interesting. I do think Sherrone Moore does not like to, and part of it's Grant Newsome now making the call if you're talking offensive line and substitutions in the game. I mean, it took him a few games to do that to Miles Hinton last year. It took till game 4 when it was pretty clear, that a change was likely at some point, especially then, you come to find out Miles Hinton was hurt, but then they make that move. He left it pretty open in terms of, what the competition will be this week and who will go out there on Saturday. He said, we don't want anyone to be comfortable. It's going to be competition. Whoever practices the best will play. So I would imagine we do see some other offensive linemen. You hope part of that is because you're up big against this Arkansas State team. But it is about how you respond to a loss like this. And, it's when you talk about culture, it's kind of the chicken or the egg, right? If you're winning, it's easy to have a good culture. And Michigan hasn't lost a game in a long time. When you're losing, it's pretty easy to have a bad culture, and it's pretty easy to have bad body language, and all this stuff starts to seep in. But it's how you respond. It's, Michigan hasn't felt this low in a non-COVID year since 2019 when you got embarrassed at Wisconsin. They come back the next week. They beat Rutgers 52-0. The week after that, they beat number 14 Iowa 10-3 at home in a win that the defense dominated as the offense got up to speed. So some parallels there. They need to come back and play better. They need to find an identity on offense. And I thought it was interesting that Sherrone Moore, and I said this after the game as well, like I thought Michigan abandoned the run a little bit too early in this game. I think Jim Harbaugh would have kept running the football. And yeah, if you run out of time at the end because you were effectively moving the ball downfield with the ground game, then so be it. But you were down pretty big. They ran the ball okay at times in this game. He said they want to run it more, get into a rhythm. That'll open everything else up. I do think you need to do that. You need to protect Davis Warren a little bit more with putting him in better situations. And they got to figure out, what are they going to do with Alex Orji? Because that clearly didn't work with his 2 third down snaps. The 3rd and 2 after Kalel had 2 nice runs. You throw, nobody's open, force a throw, interception, short field, field goal. So those types of things, they need to find something they can do offensively that works. And I look at the running back room and I say, hey, that might be your best room on offense right now. So use those guys. Yeah.
3rd down play calling, I thought was terrible, fellas. Bringing Orji in there, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 2, whatever. And yeah, everybody's like, well, it would have worked if he would have done this. Well, ifs and nuts, candy and butts, ifs and butts, candy and nuts. I'll have a Merry Christmas or whatever. Remember what Ricky Neuheisel used to say. So you know what? It didn't work. So They got to go back to the drawing board, man. There's so much to fix. But again, one really bad game, and as bad as it is, they got a chance to fix some things. And I like Davis Warren as a leader. I thought he really took that loss hard, AB. And to me, he looked like he understood that, hey, we can be better than this. We are better than this. You aren't going to see Colston Loveland just drop the ball, hopefully, and give away 7 points, maybe both ways before the half. You're not going to see him run the wrong route like he did on that second interception. Those are the things that the veterans have to be better. That's where it starts.
Yeah, I thought, just to park on Davis Warren for a second, I thought late in the game, and again, the obvious late game blowout caveats apply to it, but it felt like when they got him on the run and maybe a little less out of structure, that's probably some of the best football we've seen him play.
You can thank
his career.
You can thank Evan Link for some of that.
Yeah, well, that's having to step up and run for his life. Yeah,
you did the PFF grades. Did he grade 0.0 in something? Did I see that correctly?
Yeah, in pass blocking, he graded out 0.0. Last time I saw that was Carson Barnhart at Penn State last year, and that he gave up 3 pressures and a sack. Carson Barnhart did, but they barely threw the ball in that game. This game, they had to throw it more. He gave up 10 pressures and a sack. I don't know that I've ever seen someone give up 10 pressures in one game. So the whole O-line had to be better, but clearly right tackle was the weak link. I guess no pun intended there. Literally did not intend that, but that was definitely the weak link, and it was disappointing.
I wonder, and this is just me wondering out loud in the moment, which is horrifying, actually, because we're live on the air, but I wonder if when they determine some of these position battles that maybe a little much or a little too much. Now, again, I get meritocracy, guys earn their jobs. Nobody's guaranteed anything, but it was weird that all of a sudden game week that Dom Jadis and Evan Link were just penciled in as starters and they had won jobs. I wonder if maybe a little too much was put on maybe the highs of performances in camp instead of the steadiness of what guys are bringing to the table, because I'd love to see Andrew Gentry get a look. I've never seen, maybe it's just recency bias. I don't know that I've ever seen an offensive tackle get blown off the ball. And literally it was like James Earl Jones. It all comes full circle, like Star Wars, like a guy getting pushed back with the force, just flying backwards. I've never seen that from a right tackle before. So, I wonder if that's just, physically they still need, or a guy like Link still needs to kind of, develop before he's ready to be on the field. But, again, from there, this is a situation where that sort of performance, I think, demands everything being opened up, everything being on the table. Clayton, I think you're dead on with abandoning the run. Not to do the Jim Harbaugh comparison, but you're right. He would not have gave up on it that early. I know that game got away from them in the second quarter, but you should never leave a football game with Donovan Edwards and Khalil Mullings combining for, I think, 14 carries between the two of them. That's malpractice. That's just not good. And I think this Alex Orji thing, they need to pick a lane with it, because there are 2 ways you could have gone with this. If you were serious about him potentially being the starter, you create an entire offense around him where you're running read option. You've got, the RPO stuff off of that. You're scheming up, because it's schematically, you have to, if he's going to be in the game, you are operating with a different playbook. And it's not just, and people on our message board have said it, people on social media have said it. Oh, just plug Orji in there and basically be a service academy. It's like, one, that's not happening. It's not a video game where you just switch the depth chart around and change the playbooks and all of a sudden let's get after it here. That's something that you make that decision in spring ball and you're just riding with it. At this point, like I said, it is a waste of a play call, especially on third down when Alex Orji comes into the game and everybody in the building knows what's coming, especially when it's out of an empty backfield. That one was insane. That one was, again, third down, you want the story of this football game. The lopsided wins of Texas on third down is really what determined this game. Because you look at even some of the advanced numbers, it really just kind of comes down to that. So got to execute better. And again, with how that game, the way that game went, if Alex Orji can't get reps throwing the football in a game like that in the fourth quarter, he shouldn't be on the field. And this experiment probably needs to end. to be
There's
honest
no
with
question he would be playing if he was doing anything in practice. And he said that today. Sherrone Moore did. He said that's where the reps are going to be earned. When a couple of people asked, can he get a series here and there? And he says, yeah, if he earns it in practice. And, you know, you're going to hear people say, oh, but what if he's a gamer and so on and so forth? And he can't be worse than Davis Warren. Yes, he can. You know, everybody's pointing to the couple of passes that he missed, but hey, there's a reason that he's not playing right now. So, everything sounds good, right? I'm looking over at the questions. Why can't they get Donovan Edwards the ball in space? Donovan Edwards had one man to make miss for a touchdown, and he couldn't do it. He gets caught by the ankles too many times. He gets brought down by the ankles too many times, and it sounds great, but he's got to prove he can do it. And I know that he's had the big long runs when he's got a big hole. He's got the speed, right? However, this again, it's like AB said, this is not a video game, and you've got to play to your strengths. There's just not enough guys on this team that can make explosive plays at this point, right? Colston Loveland is kind of your big play guy, and he's your tight end. So I can't think of one guy. For example, I thought Tyler Morris would have a much better year. I thought he would be a Ronnie Bell type, and they've said how many times that he is a Ronnie Bell type, and at least Ronnie Bell made some big plays. Tyler Morris is not that right now. Samaj Morgan kind of is who he is. He had the nice play when the play broke down to keep it alive and find us some room back there for the touchdown. But right now they're just lacking playmakers. So they'd better find a way, like you guys said, to pound that ball and get to 3rd and 2s and then not screw it up when you get to 3rd and short. Even if you get to 4th and 1 at the 40 or something like that, right? If it takes you 2 downs to get a first down, but they're going to need more playmakers in the offseason. They're going to have to go to the portal. I don't think there's any question about it, not just for a quarterback, in my opinion, but for some skill position players. And this is why we've been harping on NIL for so long, because we are at the point now where they've got all this NIL, all this talent that they got pre-NIL that won a championship last year with a $4 million salary cap because they all wanted to win a natty. Now it's time that you're going to have to pony up and get some players in here because they're lacking at some of those positions.
The lack of explosive plays is jarring, and I know that part of that is not having quite the quarterback play that you want, and you're juggling the Alex Orji, Davis Warren situation with Alex Orji playing somewhat of a role, at least with a couple snaps on Saturday. But I do think Samaj Morgan has showed some things that he's a little bit more of just a guy who can catch it at the line of scrimmage. Thought Texas did a good job rallying to the ball when he did catch it near the line of scrimmage, but the big play late was somewhat encouraging. He made a couple plays in the Fresno game. I think it's right now your best playmakers from a receiving standpoint are him and Colston Loveland. But I agree. I mean, Davis Warren getting out of the pocket was encouraging. Now I thought he could have done that. Like the 3rd and 2 that we mentioned earlier was 14-3. It's, you have a 3rd and 2. You're, potentially, if you pick up a first down here, you can get in some sort of a rhythm, which is something Sherrone Moore said they have failed to do and need to do. And he kind of forced that ball in when he wasn't really pressured yet. There was one guy that was kind of coming free. He could have evaded that guy, bought himself more time, and gone into a scramble situation there and maybe made a play. So he's going to have to make some plays himself too. I think he realized that in the 4th quarter, did a better job of it. And hopefully that experience is going to lead to more success down the road in that regard. And it's not easy to do with a lack of reps that Michigan's had. It's one of the things J.J. McCarthy kept talking about throughout his first year as a starter was I'm knowing now when to run, when to keep my eyes downfield, when to stay in the pocket. Even year 1 to year 2, coming into it, he said the thing that he's improved at the most is knowing when to run, when to get out of the pocket, keep my eyes downfield, or when to just kind of cut my losses, pull it down and get a few yards. So it's not easy to do, but Davis Warren put a little bit on tape there at the end of the game that he can do some of that. He's got some athleticism, and I'd like to see it a little bit more.
Any other thoughts from what we heard on Monday? I know we've kind of been all over the place, which probably is good because we have a lot of great questions in here. But let's put a bow on Monday first. Any other takeaways?
No, other than Tommy Doman's got to be better too. I don't think anybody asked about him, but that's a guy you need to flip the field on a team like this, and we thought that would be a strength. We've heard nothing but and seen nothing but him booming huge kicks in practice and in warm-ups. Come game time, 20-something yard punt, and that was deadly to the you know what, that's just got to be better. And so right now, there were some people saying, well, your MVP is your kicker. That's not true. Although it's pretty damn close. Your best player is your kicker, right? And MVP, yeah, the last 2 games, but he's the best at what he does. But there's still too much talent on this team to be wasting guys for them to be throwing out a clunker like that. So needs to be shored up. I'm going to give these guys the benefit of the doubt right now that it was just a bad game and hope that's true.
You don't want your kicker to have more made field goals than made extra points.
Right.
That's what Dominic Zavada has right now. So they got to fix that. They got opportunity against Arkansas State to do it.
All right. Well, I think it's time. We'll just get right into questions then. Let's go to this one from Chris Wilkins, who says, does everyone else feel like the play calling is subpar? There's no cohesiveness to the calls. I watched the game thinking that we don't practice anything.
I think anytime your offense looks like it does, people are going to harp on the play calling, right? But it's the execution as much as anything. The route running that they're talking about spacing, you can see it. Guys aren't getting open. People are asking about the receivers and are they well coached enough? And I think that's a fair question at this point. Guys are not making tough catches. Maybe it's a talent thing, but at the same time, I've seen guys with less talent, getting more out of it at other schools and getting put in better positions to succeed. So I think there's something to that. But it certainly does seem like, they're trying to win the way that they have the last few years with guys that I'm not sure they're capable of doing that. So they're not blowing people off the ball. They're not running the ball like the past Michigan teams. Now, last year's team stacked against the run, but you had J.J. McCarthy back there to bail you out. You don't have him back there either. So it's got to get better. There's no question about it, but it is tough to scheme if you don't have guys making plays and you don't have playmakers, especially against a team like Texas. So I hope that they've got more in the tank there and things that they haven't shown. And, we've heard like, well, they had things that they couldn't get to just because of the way the game was going, so on and so forth. But to me, that's not an excuse. You've got to be better than you've shown the last couple of weeks.
I asked Sherrone Moore last year when he was calling Michigan's plays, like, can you get hot as a play caller? Like the plays are just flying off the sheet. And he said, yeah, he thinks so. But he said it's a lot easier when you have those players out there. Whatever you call seems like works a lot of the time. And, right now you have a bunch of new players that Kirk Campbell's working with. So it's tough to say if it's a play calling or not. And Sherrone Moore was asked about the play calling today, and that's when he first brought up that he wants them to run the football more. So, even he, feels like there could be a little bit of an adjustment there. Then he mentioned it, 4 or 5 other times throughout the press conference. He wants to run the ball more. He wants to run the ball more efficiently. So for me, it starts there. And then the usage of Alex Orji, they got to figure out what they're going to do. Are those viable options? Like on the, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 5, like, are you really going to keep bringing him in those situations when everyone knows what you're going to do?
Yeah. I think we missed this one, guys. If I'm not mistaken, did somebody pay?
Yeah, go for it.
No, I just brought it up just because I noticed that he paid and we didn't get to his question. But has O'Korn and I had O'Korn and Don Brown PTSD Saturday. John O'Korn had one good game at Michigan, and that was Purdue, right? And everybody was hopeful that he was going to be pretty good after that, and he just wasn't. So. Do I think Davis Warren has a little more upside? He made some throws that I don't remember John O'Korn making at Michigan. Agreed. So hopefully that's true. Don Brown, PTSD. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't really, even with Don Brown, it was too aggressive and, leaving guys on an island. It wasn't really the communication stuff as much. So this is a different feeling for me that why are guys missing tackles and why are guys nowhere around the play and why are guys just running wide open in the secondary, and it just looked disjointed and really not good. And part of that again is Texas's offense is fantastic. Quinn Ewers had a great game, guys, and he's a great quarterback, but some of the things, overrunning tackles and things like that, I never saw from a Don Brown defense. Really, it was more people were going to say irresponsible, and I think that's probably true. So but yeah, it was disappointing. That was the biggest disappointment of the game, guys. The defense is supposed to keep them in this. That's why we thought, if anything, if it's going to be a low scoring game, they're going to have a chance. There was no opportunity there because the defense just couldn't get it done. So as for moving Skeen to pay only, sorry about that. $4.99 a month on YouTube, or you can sign up for On3. $109 a year, $119 a year now, guys, and you will get access to all of our podcasts there.
Absolutely. You use that promo code UM1 for 2 months of access for $1. Let's go to this one from Peter L., who says, did Sherrone Moore lay any of the blame on the coaches, or was it all execution and tackling?
He didn't say anything about the coaches. He did said we have to be better, and he's right. And let's be honest, guys, they've downgraded at just about every position in terms of experience and who guys are. Mike Elston was an outstanding defensive line coach. If you look right down the list, right, Jim Harbaugh is one of the best coaches in the country. And this isn't a knock on Sherrone Moore, but there's a reason that Jim Harbaugh is probably going to win a Super Bowl, or has been close to a Super Bowl. He's won a national championship. The guy's an elite football coach, and Sherrone Moore can get there someday, but he's not Jim Harbaugh. If you look right down the line at all these positions, the experience and what guys brought to the table, I thought Steve Clinkscale was one of the best secondary coaches in the country. It doesn't mean that Lamar Morgan can't be good, but you know what? It's going to take some time. So, and I always said with Sherrone Moore, I thought he was the continuity hire, and that if he had Jim Harbaugh's staff around him, you know what? He could be a really good football coach. And now he's got his guys. He's going to have a lot to prove here in the next several games.
First-time head coach, 7 new assistant coaches, a new strength coach, a bunch of new players. I mean, it's not an easy transition. So I don't think anyone expected this staff to be the last staff. I think that, this was just kind of the first example that it's not, but as he said, I mean, he is right, though. The players had to go execute as well, and none of that came together. So, I mean, to pick, was it the coaching? Was it the players? I mean, after a performance like that, it's just too hard to say. It's everything, as Sherrone Moore said. They got to get a lot better, and they seem very motivated to do
that. And to be frank, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, because that's just more finger pointing. Because when you lose like that, it is on everyone. So everyone's on notice without. Again, we love it for the quotes and the soundbite and the discussion points, but they don't really need to say it. Like, the scoreboard says everyone needs to get their shit together, right? So that's where I think we're at with that. This is a $4.99 super chat from Michigan Go Blue 1234. He says, need more disguised blitzes. Give Alex Orji a couple series. If it doesn't work out, fine. Also, where is the smash mentality, even when we're struggling? I want to start with that Alex Orji one only because we just talked about how some of these looks with him out there are basically lighting plays on fire. So now, if we're just going towards just running the experiment and seeing what happens, it's the potential for lighting entire series on fire, which I don't think that's something that they can afford to do right now. I think that with Davis Warren, this guy just needs reps. Like, you could see the talent out there. And I know it's not really showing in the box scores. It's not showing in maybe some of the advanced numbers yet, but I think as he gets more comfortable, he could be a fine quarterback for them, and is fine good enough. We can debate the merits of that, but we're talking about a guy that could move the offense down the field, lead scoring drives, take care of the football. Needs to be better in that regard, but from there, like I said, I'm just not in favor of just. And we have a question about Jaden Davis coming up in a little bit, but I'm just not in favor going into a week 3 game of just saying, hell, just run the experiment and see what happens. What's the worst that could happen is that you lose a football game. Like, right. That's the worst that can happen. And I know there's a little more margin for error with this 12-team playoff now, but you can't just throw football games away to see what you have.
No, let's hope that they get up enough on Saturday, and there's no guarantee, guys, but to get Alex Orji more snaps and give him some opportunities and maybe see what he can do. And in a game like that against Arkansas State, if this were last year, guys, and this is one of the benefits of playing an easier schedule, right, is to get more guys on the field and see what guys can do in game situations. But I'm all for that. At the same time, Davis Warren, some of the narratives, he doesn't have the arm strength. He's got a noodle arm. That's bullshit, right? Watch some of the throws he made. Go back and look at the throw that he made to C.J. Charleston, right? Was a fantastic throw. A couple throws off his back foot that were unbelievable. And the throw was on the run. The kid's got a good arm, and he hasn't played much football. This guy, how many games did he start in high school before he got
6 or 7 between sophomore year and senior.
Right. So he's got some talent, but to sit there and blame everything on him when you've got all this new cast of characters around him, you've got receivers that aren't getting the job done, is just stupid. He is who he is. He is not. I remember Devin Gardner having to win some games by himself, and I remember saying that when you have great quarterback play like Notre Dame at the night game with Devin Gardner, 41-30 win, I think it was, then you can cover up a lot of warts with a guy like that if he's playing well. Davis Warren isn't that guy, but if you give him a good surrounding cast, then he's going to be okay. So I'm with you. Alex Orji, again, they looked for any reason, right, to start this guy because he's such a physical specimen and such a great athlete, and they gave him every opportunity to win the job, and he couldn't do it against a guy who hasn't played much football. So I think that alone speaks volumes.
It is interesting, though, that it was close. I mean, the battle was very close.
That's what they said.
Well, I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't. If it wasn't
Right.
close, I don't know why they would handcuff themselves by splitting reps until Thursday before the first game. So it was close. I do wonder if we'll see Alex Orji get a series or two. I think that would be kind of interesting. But I do think Davis Warren, there's a reason why he's been out there, as you said, Chris, and as Sherrone Moore said, right? He's got to earn it in practice. So we'll see if something like that happens. If he does get in, he'll have earned it, or Davis Warren will have lost his opportunity. But and Jack Tuttle is getting healthier. So I wonder how he factors in if you do make a change. But right now I've seen some things from Davis Warren that he needs to get better at. I think a lot of that, though, will come with reps. And I don't know that he is who he is. I actually think he has a lot of room for improvement in terms of like you said, he has a good arm. He showed some mobility, playmaking ability on Saturday. So I think you can kind of work with that a little bit. But, I mean, clearly he's not J.J. McCarthy or even close. He's not dynamic enough right now. And that is tough when you don't have the same level of physicality and run game that you had to lean on before. And, the weapons on the outside. If you had Cornelius Johnson and Roman Wilson, these steady wide receivers, and Roman was dynamic, then maybe you could piece things together a little bit better. But the fact that they're what they are at quarterback right now, coupled with having a bunch of new inexperienced faces around him, that's why you see the clunkiness, the not being able to pick up third downs. And then you watch Texas, and it's the exact opposite. It's what we saw Michigan do to teams last year. You realize that's how far they have to go. But right now it seems like Warren's the best option.
Just while we're on quarterbacks really quick, Dred Roberts has two questions. One, any word on Tuttle? Is he going to be available to play this season? I know Sherrone was asked about that on Monday as well.
Yeah, I don't count on that just because of his history with injury. And again, this summer he was throwing the ball better than anybody. But you got to stay healthy. And he's so far behind because he hasn't taken the reps, right? And I think my gut feeling is that they're going to just give those reps to Davis Warren, and they think that they can win with him as much as they could with Jack Tuttle. That's just the way I feel.
I think you give the reps to Davis Warren, and if you do have to make a change and Tuttle gets healthy enough and does have enough reps under his belt, then I think you look at him as a real option. But I think you got to roll with Davis Warren at this point until you don't. But yeah, he did. I asked him about that today. He said, because Jack Tuttle dressed last game, he was questionable, not sure if he was available or not. But, he said that he's throwing more this week and should be ready to go, were the exact words. So, we maybe available Saturday. So it'll be kind of interesting.
We'll see. You know what? Again, we'll see on that. And sometimes what you say, what they say in front of the media isn't exactly what's been going on. So there were concerns, guys, just a few weeks ago that, hey, this thing could be lingering all season. I know that for a fact. So we'll see about that. But hey, again, if he goes out there and he gets some practice reps and he kills it, throw him out there. What do you got to lose if he's doing well?
Well, they have to put in those availability reports, and the fact that he wasn't, flat
Right.
out, I think
Right.
tells you that he's improving his health. So,
Did he dress on Saturday?
He did dress
Okay,
and
there
warmed
you
up.
go. That helps.
Mm-hmm. And really quick, because there's not much to discuss here. Any chance we see Jaden Davis this week? No.
No, his father wanted him to redshirt, or his family wanted him to redshirt anyway. We'll have a report on him in Friday's Inside the Fort on our site. Again, sign up if you want to. But that is, I understand everybody wants to, they look, hey, well, this guy's a great quarterback, 4-star, so on and so forth. But that's not realistic at this point.
I do wonder where he's at on the depth chart, because last week on his radio show, Sherrone Moore was asked about the other quarterbacks. He said, Jaden Donegal has done well. He said the guy who's stepped up even more, though, is Jaden Davis. So, and if Alex Orji, I think they would trust him to be the backup. Like, I think Alex Orji is the backup. Like, if Davis Warren went down, he would come in, but probably Jaden Davis is third. So you can still redshirt by playing in 4 games. And so I wouldn't rule out seeing him Saturday.
I mean, if they see him Saturday, it means this team has kind of flipped a switch in terms of, at least for Saturday, taking care of its business. But no, this is not it's not like the video game again, where, hey, F it, let's throw the freshman in there. It's not going to happen like that.
Right.
We have time for a few more here. I'm going to go to this one from Welch's McGee, who says, when will Sherrone Moore take play calling over? Kirk Campbell has been atrocious, to steal Anthony's word, malpractice on offense. I wouldn't stole the word, not necessarily the take from me. I think that, I mean, you hired an offensive coordinator for a reason. You got to let him run the show. But on the same token, you know, when Jim Harbaugh was steadfast about a certain situation or overruling, you know, maybe what the play call was, you know, to run the football here or run something else there, I do think that, you know, if there's some conviction from the head coach that he wants to do something, I think that he should do that because he is a former offensive coordinator. But I don't know that, you know, 2 weeks in, I'm just not ready to do the whole fire this guy, strip duties away from this guy. There's so much growth that needs to happen now. If it's week 7, 8, 9, whatever, and there's not any progress, or maybe they're even going backwards, I'm willing to hear that out a little more. But right now, I think that I just think there needs to be a little more conviction in the identity of this football team, which both of those guys shape. But yeah, everyone's got to be better for sure.
Yep, without a doubt. And I think Sherrone Moore is already involved a little bit. And Sherrone Moore and Kirk Campbell were, thick as thieves last year in developing plays and game plans. So I do think Sherrone's fingerprints are on it. This is what he wants to run, and this is how he wants to run it. Guys aren't executing, and it starts up front. We've talked about the offensive line. And they're the ones, guys, that told us, you know, Grant Newsom saying Giovanni El-Hadi would be in the NFL if he hadn't been playing behind Trevor Keegan, and Josh Preeb was an all Big Ten guy last year, and Miles Hinton has played a ton of football, and right down the line, guys waiting their turns, and together as a unit, they've been bad. So it is on them to fix it. They've set the expectation for these guys, and they said they're going to continue to smash. So it's on them, and that's where it starts. Execution is basically it, and no play call is going to work if you've got your right guard pulling into the ass of your center. It just isn't. So, and guys running bad routes and sloppy routes. So at times, frankly, Davis Warren was their best offensive player on the field. I know it was the fourth quarter, and I know it was garbage time, but he bailed a lot of guys out with some of his play in the fourth quarter, and that's scary.
It's 2 games. To call the play calling atrocious, there are some specific examples. People sometimes fail to use specific examples when they rail play calling. There are some, that I disagreed with. We talked about some of them already, some of the third downs, but to call it atrocious seems strong 2 weeks in. People liked Kirk Campbell 2 weeks ago, and it's, again, 2 games. So we'll see. And I'm sure Sherrone Moore has input if he wants to in certain situations. And like he said, he wants them to run the ball more. So it's not like they don't want to make adjustments with what they're calling, but, to just scrap Kirk Campbell's, as a play caller and say that now Sherrone's going to take over seems like a panic move 2 weeks in.
Absolutely. Yellow shirt guy for $4.99 says, fellas, sometimes we need to get our chicken sandwich while we get things figured out. It wasn't too long ago that everyone wanted Jim Harbaugh out of here.
Not everyone. Not everyone. So when and in fact, yeah, we said if he got his edge back, if we get the old Jim Harbaugh, we've got the old Jim Harbaugh back. And but yeah, you're right. Yellow shirt guy. God, I love that. the Doug Skeen story. But yeah, you're right. And it's a long season. And again, that USC game, guys, is absolutely huge. That is one where you have a chance to basically, if you win that game, then you're kind of back on track here. And I'm not predicting that they're going to, but it certainly is a winnable game. You playing at home. I'm not looking past Arkansas State, but I'm excited to see that.
USC, who knows how good LSU is too. So we'll learn a lot about USC when they come to the big house. But LSU was in a game with Nichols on Saturday, fellas. Nichols. Nichols, a school that not many people have heard of. So we still don't know what USC is. We still don't know what Michigan is. Clearly not a top 3 team in the country right now or close, but where's that in between? What's USC? What's Michigan? Are these top 15 teams? Are these top 25 teams? Because even when Michigan was number 4 in the country 3 years ago in 2021, they looked like they did Saturday against the number 1 team in the country that won the national championship. Texas may win the national championship this year. I don't think Michigan's number 4, but college football kind of goes that way. Chris, you said it earlier. There are 3 teams, maybe 4, that look better than everybody else. That's kind of how college football has been. I know it's evened out a little bit in between in recent years, probably due to NIL. Maybe the top 10 is a little stronger and deeper than before, but we'll see what Michigan is. There's room for them to be a top 20 team or whatever. Same with USC, but we'll see as the year goes on. Plenty of big games to prove themselves.
There are plenty of games left. The best thing about it is that it will be decided on the field. There's no cushion. There is no runway, which in some ways is good for what we find out about this team. In other ways, maybe you'd like to see them play the schedule that they played last year where you had that ramp up, but they're not. They have the schedule that they do. Butch Jones in Arkansas State coming to town on Saturday. He's 13-26 there. There's no reason they shouldn't bully this team. We'll do some more work on them and what they bring to the big house on Saturday when we do our Thursday show. But fellas, our time is up here. Be sure to like and subscribe if you're watching on the YouTube channel. Use that promo code UM1 for 2 months of access to thewolverine.com for only $1. For me, Anthony Broom, and Chris Ballas, and Clayton Safey, and our producer Megan behind the scenes. Thanks for watching tonight. We'll talk to you guys later this week.